InvestorIdeas.com Podcasts.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com Podcasts. In today's podcast, I'm looking at a few public company announcements from VEXT Science Incorporated, trading on the CSE as VEXT and the OTCQX as VEXTF. Curaleaf Holdings Incorporated, trading on the CSE as CURA and the OTCQX as CURLF. KHRN Life Sciences Corporation, trading on the TSXV Venture as KHRN and the OTCQX as KHRNF. And Cannabis Technologies Incorporated, trading on the CSE as BLO and the OTC as BLOZF. First, starting with VEXT Science Incorporated, who is a cannabinoid brand-based leader based in Arizona, leveraging its core expertise in extraction, manufacturing, cultivation, and marketing to build a profitable multi-state footprint, who announced today that it's entered into 3 separate purchase and sales agreements to acquire a vacant industrial facility located in Eloy, Arizona, the company's operated indoor cultivation facility in Phoenix, and the company's operated indoor cultivation facility in Prescott Valley. And VEXT will pay approximately $6.55 million in aggregate cash consideration upon the closing of the transactions, representing the outright purchase of the Eloy facility and deposits on the Phoenix and Prescott Valley facilities. And the company expects to enter into vendor financing agreements for the balance of the Phoenix and Prescott Valley facilities. Arizona represents one of the most exciting growth opportunities in the U.S. cannabis market today, and by adding wholly owned cultivation capacity, we are ensuring that VEXT is positioned to maximize its share of this growth, both retail and wholesale channels, said Eric Offenberger, CEO of VEXT. And with the move to adult use legalization in January and recent expansion announcements in other industries such as semiconductor production, we expect to become increasingly challenging to find suitable cultivation locations within proximity to key population centers. Now, by owning and expanding our cultivation capacity, we ensure stability of supply and solid margins both for the production of our award-winning vape and brand and our operated dispensaries. And the transactions offer us flexibility to sell high-quality production into the wholesale market in the short term to generate additional cash flow while looking to accreditably add to our Arizona retail footprint. So VEXT doing some pretty decent expansion with regards to cultivation in Arizona. Again, we have seen that market since January has continued to expand quite aggressively when you're looking at overall sales. There's a lot of expectation this year on the possibility of really opening up tourism again in Arizona and how that is going to affect the overall sales. And I do think that, and this is something I've noticed from a few other companies, having that close access to your own cultivation facilities and having them owned by you is going to become essential for a lot of the businesses based in that state. Again, a lot of aggressive growth is going to be happening over the next couple of months, and those sales will probably continue on into next year, presumably. So for a lot of these companies, having a decent supply chain and a supply chain that is wholly owned is going to become quite essential. So I would definitely pay attention to VEXT over the next coming months on the continuation of those facilities and actually getting them up and running, and really to the Arizona market in total. Like I said, I do think that is going to be fairly aggressive moving forward. Looking next at Curaleaf Holdings Incorporated, who has successfully completed the previously announced acquisition of EMAC Life Sciences Limited, which is the largest vertically integrated independent cannabis company in Europe, for base consideration of approximately $50 million US in cash and 17.5 million shares of Curaleaf, with additional consideration to be paid based upon the successful achievement of performance milestones. And Curaleaf has simultaneously established Curaleaf International Holdings Limited in Guernsey to hold the EMAC investment and further its European expansion. Now, to accelerate the expansion of Curaleaf International, Curaleaf has secured an investment of $130 million US from a single strategic institutional investor in exchange for 31.5% equity stake of Curaleaf International, implying a $413 million post-money valuation with $80 million US in cash available to spend. And the subscription will fund the entire cash portion of the EMAC acquisition consideration of $50 million, with the remaining $80 million to be used to fund Curaleaf International's current capital expenditures plan through 2022, as well as its pipeline of potential acquisitions. This infusion of outside capital into Curaleaf International significantly accelerates Curaleaf's expansion plans in Europe by fully funding Curaleaf's cash outlay for the EMAC acquisition and providing the capital required to support Curaleaf's international near-term European rollout. Now, Curaleaf and strategic investor have entered into a shareholders agreement regarding the governance of Curaleaf International, pursuant to which Curaleaf will have control over operational issues as well as raising capital and the ability to exit the business. And in addition, the strategic investor's stake is subject to put call rights, which permits either party to cause the stake to be bought out by Curaleaf for Curaleaf equity starting in 2025. Now, Boris Johnson, executive chairman of Curaleaf, stated, "This successful completion of our acquisition of EMAC and the formation of our new Curaleaf International business marks a transitional launching point for our entrance into the European cannabis market. Building on our market-leading position in the U.S., this transaction establishes Curaleaf as the global pure-play cannabis market leader by revenue and geographic reach. And with our single strategic institutional investor, we've set a strong foundation for Curaleaf International's future growth trajectory. And on behalf of the Curaleaf Board of Directors and Management Team, we're thrilled to welcome Antonio Constanzo, co-founder and CEO of EMAC, as the CEO of Curaleaf International and the entire EMAC team to Curaleaf." Now, the new Curaleaf International platform includes cultivation, EU GMP certified processing, distribution, and R&D operations across several key European medical cannabis markets, including the UK, Germany, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. Terra Verde, Curaleaf International's European market cultivation facility in Portugal, is one of the oldest licensed cannabis growing facilities in Europe, with approximately 2 hectares of cultivation area, and is an industrial leader on the cannabis production cost efficiency front. And the Portugal-based cultivation facility provides Curaleaf International with the potential to serve customers across key European medical cannabis markets, as well as supporting exports to countries such as Israel, among others. And Curaleaf International plans to significantly increase its cultivation capacity in 2021 and to exceed 10 tons per year by 2022 in order to accommodate future growth related to the expansion of access to cannabis across major European medical and adult use markets, as well as export markets. Now, Joseph Bayern, CEO of Curaleaf, commented, "As the consumer and political liberalization trends around cannabis are sweeping the U.S. are increasingly taking hold across Europe, our expansion into the international cannabis market presents tremendous new long-term growth opportunities for Curaleaf. Now, with the European population of nearly 748 million, the potential European addressable market is more than twice the size of the U.S. addressable market. And with the ability to operate our new European businesses across country borders with 1 or 2 cultivation sites and 1 manufacturing center to serve the entire region in most cases, combined with our ability to leverage the strength of our consumer packaged goods strategies and innovations from our U.S. operations, we see enormously positive implications for our ability to quickly and efficiently scale the business across Europe." So, obviously, I already talked about Curaleaf's expansion in the U.S., continuing along quite aggressively, and now obviously moving into Europe with the same amount of fervor. I would definitely pay attention to them over the next coming year. I think that they're going to have a pretty significant hand in the European market. Again, they'll probably launch most of their Curaleaf exclusive brands into that market when and if they are able to. And I would expect some success with that, as again, those brands have seen real success in the U.S. market so far. And really, this kind of marks the beginning where we're starting to see a lot more companies. Again, if you're looking at the overall trends in the market right now, there's been a lot of companies really pumping the gas towards their European expansion over the last 6 months. And again, this is sort of the anticipation of moving towards a global cannabis industry. Again, I've talked about that a lot in the past, but now that's becoming much closer to a reality. Again, we're expecting a little bit more legal leniency in the U.S. within the next year, potentially. Same thing goes, there's legalization potential coming out of Mexico within the next couple of months as well. And once those things go into place, I would expect to start seeing some pretty aggressive legislation changes in Europe as well. They are already in the midst of that in a lot of the different countries there. I don't know if you're ever going to see some sort of European Union official position on cannabis, which makes it a little bit more accessible for cross-border import, exportation, etc. But that also does seem potentially likely within the next 2 years. So, you're going to start to see a lot of these companies, again, setting themselves up to have basically a decent supply chain and strategy for moving product from the US and North America into Europe and around some of those regions as well. Again, their competition is going to also be coming out of Latin America and out of Israel and parts of Africa. But having the brand names that they've already built up within the US market could translate better into the European market than some of those companies coming out of Latin America or out of Israel. That will be dependent. I do expect that you'll start to see companies like a Curaleaf, not them maybe specifically, but some of the other large multi-state operators in the US or large Canadian operators start working with and having specific partnerships regarding cultivation or extraction with some of these Israel-based or Latin American-based or African-based companies. Because again, you're going to have some supply issues that start showing up once those markets really open up aggressively. But for right now, definitely is a big step for Curaleaf, and again, really shows their plan on being a large global player. Speaking of Latin American companies, KHRN Life Sciences Corporation provided an operational update with regards to its supply of EU GMP medical cannabis products to the UK. And to help alleviate bottlenecks and stockouts, the company has established an offshore inventory of dried flower for the express purpose of serving UK patients. So speaking towards that supply and demand issue I was kind of addressing. Now, furthermore, the company is broadening its product portfolio by introducing Chiron 1 quarter, a high CBD flower to the UK in the second quarter of this year. And this follows a successful launch in Germany, where it was prescribed for indications such as anxiety, substance use disorder, and migraines. And Chiron 1 quarter will complement Chiron 20-1, a high THC flower, which is already being prescribed to patients in the UK. And prescribing specialists will also be able to prescribe smaller quantities of their flower products in 5-gram jars, thanks to the enhanced capabilities of the company's EU GMP certified fulfillment partner. Tejinder Virk, president of Chiron Europe, commented, "The European market is growing and Chiron is well positioned through our differentiated educational platform, mounting clinical evidence and EU GMP certified products ready for prescription. Our team continues to work diligently to increase patient access to medical cannabis products, and patients will now benefit through greater product variety and volumes. And in the coming months, we plan to introduce additional cannabis-based medical products from our registered Colombian strains, elevating the level of clinical data available to medical professionals in the UK." So again, also heavily expanding and focusing on that EU market. And again, the biggest issue that does seem to be what's going to be continuing to happen in the EU for the next coming years is going to be that supply chain and overall the general cannabis infrastructure within those communities. That is going to be a challenge for everyone. Looking at Curaleaf, though, by comparison, they did just get that huge boost of funding, so they have the ability to expand a little bit more aggressively over the next year. And again, there is going to be a fiercer and fiercer competition within the EU marketplace. Lastly, today, looking at Cannabis Technologies Incorporated, the developer of the Cannabis marijuana breathalyzer for law enforcement and the workplace, who reported that it will begin beta testing its THC breath analyzer with a private drug testing clinic located in the northwestern United States. Cannabis expects to deliver its version 3.0 THCBA prototype to this clinic in the coming months to begin a breath testing with select patients. Now, the company and the clinic have entered into a non-disclosure agreement, and the collaborating clinic has a robust drug testing operation as one of the top drug testing providers to employers within its respective state. And the high-volume clinic has a diverse range of patients and focuses on private sector testing for alcohol and illicit drugs. And the clinic has extensive experience beta testing with new drug testing technologies. And in the recent past, the collaborating clinic was selected to be an early tester of the oral swab devices, which have been authorized for use in certain jurisdictions. Now, beta testing of the THCBA prototype will be focused on training the device's machine learning database to help determine sensitivity ranges and improving user and administrator experience. Now, furthermore, this data will help with identifying cross-reactivity of other substances with the study population, and the THCBA is a drug screening device for employers in other markets who are seeking for a way to quickly, easily, and non-invasively test for recent use of THC, the psychoactive compound of marijuana that causes impairment. Current forms of testing for marijuana can identify THC ranging from minutes to days prior to actual use, making it difficult to show the differences between the two. Studies have shown that the breath is a better indicator of impairment than saliva and urine because THC is present in breath for a relatively short period of time, 1 to 3 hours, whereas it is excreted as detectable levels in other body fluids for many hours, days, or even weeks after smoking. And this short time period of detection in breath aligns with the peak impairment window. Now, I'm sure if you are a cannabis smoker or someone who's very pro cannabis, breathalyzer technology is not exactly the exciting thing or something you really want to hear about. But in general, this is going to be a very essential part of cannabis becoming globally adopted and really being, I guess, on an even term with other substances such as alcohol or tobacco. In that right now, there is a huge difficulty when you're looking at areas where legal cannabis is allowed and the workforce in that area being able to consume cannabis and not fail drug tests. For instance, for most transportation drivers, they do get regularly blood tested, and they're doing that through a urine test traditionally. Occasionally, they're doing it through a cotton swab, but again, that is less frequent. The big issue with doing these urine tests is that THC stays in your system for up to 90 days. And that's on average, especially if you are a male and you have excess body fat, you're pretty much fucked. It usually can stay in your system for sometimes up to 3 to 4 months. And again, this can also be an issue when you are trying to detox as well, in that it's stored in your fat cells. So even just doing exercise and staying healthier, you can burn those calories off and have the cannabis actually go back into your bloodstream, giving you another failed test. I've seen this firsthand many a times, dealing with many people who are trying to detox specifically for their tests. It's a real struggle for a lot of the workforce when you're looking at Canada, when you're looking at legalized states. And this will be continued to be an issue when you're looking again at the globalized cannabis industry. In order for legalization to be as effective as we want it to be, there also needs to be the ability for people to consume cannabis on their off time and have it not infringe upon their jobs. Again, you're going to always have a segment of the population because of the jobs they are involved with, whether it's police, certain medical operations, certain large machine operators. They're not going to be able to have cannabis in their system, again, if they're getting that urine test. Now, having quick access to these breath testing devices changes that dynamic, so it will allow for cannabis to be more in consideration with alcohol, in that as long as you're not doing it on the job and you're not currently intoxicated when you're showing up to work, it's fine. You can consume it in your off time. And again, when you're looking at alcohol, the traces of that get out of your urine within a very short amount of time. Very easy to detox. It's actually much easier to detox meth, crack, or cocaine out of your system than it is to detox cannabis. So by having these breath testing devices become more standardized, become very efficient, and actually be able to test for THC in your breath within a very short time screen, and if it can also test for other substances as well, that's going to make it more useful, and eventually it will become adopted by a lot of these drug testing labs instead of going with the traditional urine test. So it's a very much as it doesn't seem like it's going to be an exciting thing, because most people, when they're hearing about breathalyzers, are thinking about road stops with cops. And obviously, that is going to be the big market for their THCBA device from Cannabis once they do get this all working. Obviously, selling it to police forces is going to be a big percentage of their sales, but the other side of it is going to be to these drug testing facilities, and that's a much bigger market, as well as a really beneficial market for overall cannabis consumers. So it is kind of a weird thing in that not exactly rooting for better drug testing for cannabis, but it is an essential thing if you want to allow the average person and the average workforce, whether it's a government employee or, again, any of these people who are working with specific high machinery, they want to have access to cannabis as well. And only by having these breathalyzers become standardized, become effective, and become cost efficient as well. That's another big issue that when you're looking at the breathalyzers and why they're not being mass adopted at any point right now is the overall expense on them does outweigh the traditional urine test method. But eventually, hopefully, this will be massively adopted, in which case, again, THC will not be viewed as an aggressive drug as compared to, again, your cocaine and meth and amphetamines, etc. So hopefully they do have good results from this, and those THCBA devices start showing up in medical clinics and drug screening clinics, both in Canada and the US, and globally once that expands. That's all for today's podcast. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.